Thanks, Ceann Corley. Thanks, Minister, and I welcome the opportunity to speak on this bill. And when I think it's just important that when we're discussing this and discussing, I suppose, the records, that we're mindful that they're records of people's lives, really records of hurt, abuse, violence, marginalisation and fear. And I think we need to be very careful about making decisions without adequate outreach to the survivors of abuse, their families and the advocacy groups who speak on their behalf. We obviously have concerns that without new legislation, the records will be disposed of with the dissolution of the Commission to inquire into child abuse, the Residential Institutions Redress Board and the Residential Institutions Redress Review Committee. However, having said that, and at the same time to seal and withhold these records from public access for a period of 75 years does raise question marks. It seems an unreasonable period of time preventing any access, and I also worry about the reference in the bill to deem the records to be the records in possession of the Department of Education and Skills and to transfer those to the National Archives. These records, as I've said, are the lived, horrific experiences of the residents in all of these institutions who suffered at the hands of the state, and they belong to the survivors and their families and nobody else. We must never forget what went on in these institutions or whitewash them out of memory or indeed future generations. It's part of the past and we must acknowledge that and face that. We must remember that generation after generation will remember the pain and suffering that was caused at the hands of the Church and of the state. By locking these testimonies away for 75 years, is that not what we are doing? Sort of nearly repeating the negative history that all these people have suffered, that you know, I mean, when we had redress and we had the various schemes and apologies, like if we now say to these people that for 75 years these records are going to be sealed, and I know nobody wants the records destroyed, obviously that's fairly obvious, but there must be some happy medium or some way of meeting in the middle, because most survivors, and I know, Minister, you've said like there's mixed views or mixed stories, but I would say that the majority of survivors, or certainly survivors that we have heard from, are very concerned about this and concerned that it's sort of another failing of them at the hands of the state. They obviously were failed in the worst way possible, and here we are sort of in the same boat. I think that there has to be some common sense applied here, and you know, definitely there needs to be consultation with the survivors groups and with the families, and we need to look and see, I think, if there's some way of meeting in the middle. 75 years seems extremely excessive, and I think, you know, we don't want to be in a situation where we're adding even more hurt and more insult to injury to people who've already suffered so horrifically. So I think obviously we will have more discussion at committee stage, which I look forward to and welcome that, but I do think we need to seriously look at this and see, is there some way that we can obviously not destroy the records, but at the same time not leave it for a full 75 years. Thanks.
Sure.